All right, Patrick, it is time to wax poetic about all of our favorite opening day experiences. It is time to talk about what it is that the Colorado Rockies can do and accomplish now that baseball is back and real. It is time to do some extraordinarily fun things. But first, we do have to do a little bit of housekeeping for everybody. We appreciate you joining us, of course, if you're here on the live. We got to talk about some news that we have not yet had an opportunity to discuss between you and I. Of course, anyone who follows us on all the social media and is subscribed to the DNVR.com, well, you're not coming late to this conversation. You've already heard us break down all of this, but just quickly for everyone, there have been a couple of things that have come out. The Rockies announcing their final roster. It did turn out that Scott Oberg was not healthy enough to make that final roster, so you're going to get Ashton Godot maybe making his major league debut, certainly being on an opening day roster for the first time, skipping right over AAA. The only other real bit of news in terms of roster stuff, I think, was the Colorado Rockies deciding to carry 3 catchers, taking Butera and Elias Diaz along with Tony Wolters, and deciding not to take Brendan Rodgers on either the main squad or the taxi squad, sending him to that satellite team out there in Metro. Your response, I know we're getting in a little bit later, but still to the final Rockies roster here.
Yeah, Godot's interesting because he's making his first opening day. In fact, he's making his first ever, call up to the big club at age 28, and we saw DJ Johnson do that last year at age 29. I think he was only the 9th player age 29 or older to make the opening day roster at that age or older. Danny Ardois, I think, might have been the oldest at 31, something like that. So it's pretty rare that you're going to see an older guy make his first opening day team like that. And as you said, didn't even, show up in AAA yet, but he's ready to go. He was originally on my taxi squad because, again, he's one of those long reliever types, and we know that either Chichi Gonzalez or Jeff Hoffman's going to be that long reliever guy. You might need 2. And I think that's where Godot's spot is going to be really safe. As far as Brendan Rodgers is concerned, he has 136 days of service time, which you're going to go, wow, that seems like a lot for a guy who only played 20 or so games. Well, when he went on the 60-day IL last year, he got major league service time for that. So I don't know if it's, I'm not going to say contract manipulation, or service time manipulation, but it is something that teams do. So it could be a way to allow the Rockies to get back another year of service time so that Brendan Rodgers doesn't become a free agent in his prime at age 28. They can keep him around for another year. So there could be a little bit like that. He also just might not be ready.
Yeah, there's also the point whether it's he's not ready because he may have needed a little bit more season anyway, or he's not ready because he only played a handful of games last year before sustaining a very serious injury and has not faced live true competition except for 2-3 games at spring training 1.0 before the lockdown came and totally wiped out all of that positive momentum he had going. Really no way to get it back at a summer camp in just a couple of weeks against your own teammates. I do think it's better for him to be out there playing satellite ball, real simulated games, as opposed to being on the taxi squad, which is just going to have to basically do drills and practice to stay fresh out there. I don't think that's a good place for him. He was going to be behind these other guys anyway. It's a little bit rough and maybe not the direction that I would have gone with, but a 100% justifiable move, in my opinion, especially with the way Butera has been hitting. And as you've talked about before, he's a value to the organization in a lot of ways. And just totally getting rid of that guy when he does bring something. And he's showing you a little bit with the offense when you're not 100% sure Rodgers is ready. Justified.
That's right, and obviously Rodgers has way more of an upside than anybody on the bench. You might even make the case for a couple starters in Friday night's opening day lineup. But right now, if you look at that starting lineup, there are 6 players that are going to be riding the bench tonight for Colorado. They're all right-handed hitters, and when you think about a big spot for a pinch hit opportunity, once Lance Lynn comes out of the game and you've got some lefties and you say, I don't know if I like, Sam Hilliard's odds against this lefty. Are you really going to Brendan Rodgers first and foremost? Or are you going with a Matt Kemp, a veteran guy like Chris Owings, Elias Diaz, or the hot-hitting Drew Butera? Well, if you're not going with Brendan Rodgers, then it's just better for him to just get that practice time at MSU and ultimately not move along his service time and increase the likelihood that he becomes a free agent sooner than later.
Yeah. The only other bit of news that's really big enough that we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss it, that we haven't had an opportunity to discuss on the podcast yet, is, of course, the expansion, the very last minute expansion of the MLB postseason. I don't have the details in front of me right this second, Patrick, but I think everyone gets into the playoffs now. If I read that correctly, everyone gets into the postseason this year, which is pretty dope. No, 16 teams. Did I read that correctly?
In each league, too, which is weird because there's only 30 baseball teams, but apparently I think 2 AAA or indie leagues. Not sure what Manfred was going on about. No, yeah, it'll be 8 teams
ASU
in each
might
league.
show up. You don't know.
You don't know. So in a sense, they're saying, hey, we're still going to have 2 wild card teams for the 7th and 8th seed, and then winning, getting second place in your division is kind of like winning the division. It gives you a guaranteed spot. So even if the Rockies go 30-30, as long as they are the second best team in the NL West, they are in. So you could have someone who is the 9th best team maybe have a better record. I mean, it seems relatively unlikely if you move it around. But I kind of like that idea where, normally you say, hey, all the National League teams kind of play the same teams. Yeah, they play within their division, but then they play each other, throughout the league. And yes, their interleague games are different. But right now, it is just West versus West. And it's like if you want to create those extra playoff spots, you do it already for first place in the division, even though there are some wild card teams that win more games than the division winners. So fine, just say first and second place. Now that gives fair representation among all the divisions, and then we've got 2 more additional wild card games. It'll be a best of 3 series. I don't know all the details with that, but I do know that the division winners, I think, are going to stay home. It might even be just the higher seed, so you could have the top, the division winners, and then whatever team has the best record that wasn't a division winner, so the 4th best team, they're going to be home for a 3-game series, so they'll have that home field advantage so that the teams don't have to travel back and forth.
Right.
That being said, you could still have a number 8 defeat a number 1. That's very possible. In a 3-game series, the Rockies could knock out Atlanta or even the Dodgers in L.A. or in Atlanta.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things we've been doing, right? Going back and looking at these sample sizes. You can go back and cherry pick from even their worst years, times where the Rockies won a 3-game set against anybody as good as they may be. Yeah, so it's absolutely on the table. It's really fascinating to me, Patrick. I think this is a good way to go, honestly. I do. I think it's going to cut down a little bit on anyone who's going to feel like, especially teams that get off to a rough start and are really hot at the end of the season but don't have quite enough time to make up for it under the old traditional postseason format. Now that there's extra space for those teams to get in, I feel like everyone who feels like their team has postseason talent is going to feel like they got in, which brings me to this point. Before this decision was made, I would have told you I think the Rockies make the postseason, but it's not necessarily disappointment if they don't. Now, it very, very much is a disappointment if they don't make the postseason. They're good. They're good enough. They should be there. They better make this happen now.
And say what you will about the Padres or the Diamondbacks,
and I have,
but those organizations are going to feel the exact same way too, right? If you're a team that's just out of it, Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Miami, those are the only 3 teams in the National League that are going to go, hey, if we make the playoffs, cool, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Those other 12 remaining teams are going to say, we've got a shot. So there, you're right. It increases the likelihood of them making the playoffs and almost the expectations. It also does a couple things. One in which it makes the trade deadline on August 31st, not only all that much more important, but that less likely that we're going to see a
Yeah.
really big trade because everyone's in it. It's just going to be, calling up Farhan Zaidi of the Giants and going, look, there's 6 teams that stink and are trying to get rid of guys.
Everyone's
And hey,
calling up Farhan.
yeah, right. If you need another bat in your lineup, all right. Hey, Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, take some of those veteran guys, to stash on your bench, whatever it is, if you're willing to pay those contracts going forward. The other thing that it does is it turns MLB postseason just for this year, and I don't know that we're going to really see it going forward, but it turns the postseason into a tournament. And not just any tournament, the NCAA March Madness.
No, we're talking
it is
October
going to be
madness, baby.
That's right. It's going to be crazy because, like you said, you just got to get in, and you could see anything happening. If you're the 7th or 8th best, if you're the 8th best team, obviously you're not that great. You're good, but you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Even if you're 7th, even if you're 6th, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Well, now those teams get in, and they can be a real Cinderella. It's like a small school somewhere winning their tournament. They've got a 16-15 record, and you see them, ranked as like a 15 seed. Those
George
15
Mason.
seeds, yes, like a George Mason of Virginia Commonwealth University from several years ago. Bucknell, they've got the predilection to win those games.
You better hope my mother isn't listening to this, Bucknell.
She went to Bucknell too? I thought she went only to Kansas.
Yeah, that's who they.
That's
beat.
Right.
That's
thank you.
That was their number
Sorry,
one.
Barbara.
They were the Dodgers that year, and they got Bucknelled.
I picked Bucknell in that game, actually.
Did you really?
I actually did, yes. But they had a couple upsets that year. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what happens in that matchup. You're going to have momentum. If you win 8 of the last 10 games of the season and you finish 500, you go, cool, look at that. Hey, this team might be good next year. Wait a minute. You can go 8-2 in your final 10 games of the season this year, sneak in with a 500 winning percentage at 30-30, and go on a run and win the World Series with an average regular season team because you got hot at the right time. We will never see that again in Major League Baseball. Frankly, we shouldn't. I'm not for that. I don't really want to see a 500
Not
team
in general, no.
get in the playoffs, but that makes the playoffs incredibly exciting this year.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have the time and space, because you're totally right. The whole thing is you need more time and space to figure out who the best baseball teams are. That's why the game is built the way it is. We don't even have that option this year, though, so you might as well, right? We're not going to have the time and space. We got to wrap this thing up by the end of October. If it's going to be this intense, let's go all out. Let's make it that much more intense. Let's just get back to normalcy after that, right?
Chalk Jayhawk, Rocktober, these things, there's something going on there.
I see you working back. No, I saw you working back into the good graces. That's good stuff. All right. So one of the other things that we wanted to do here as we look forward to the rest of the Colorado Rockies season, Patrick, is force ourselves, our collective selves. I did the tweet today where I referred to us as we. I just, we're a collective at this point.
You, me, our love, it's all good, baby.
It's all there. But we got to play one of our favorite new games, game we like to call Start, Bench, Cut. This is the harsh game of reality. This is what managers have to go through, though usually not quite this contrived. Still, this is the difficulty of saying, having really strong baseball opinions. Let's see where they stand. Who are you going to start? Who are you going to bench? And who are you going to cut for your Colorado Rockies this season with these collection of names?
And really, we're not talking about who. We're talking about what. What is most likely to happen out of these three, and what is least likely to happen? Do we have an Arenado MVP? Do we have a John Gray Cy Young Award or Herman Marquez Cy Young Award? Or maybe, Drew, maybe you think there should be a different third one. What are the top three likelihoods? Is it Trevor Story MVP and not Gray Cy Young Award? That's where it becomes hard.
I think that could be a little more likely. Yeah.
I think so, too.
Yeah. I think the Story, I think you've got to, with these three, I think you've got to start the Arenado MVP. I think that's the most likely of the three for sure. While I am big on Marquez this year, that you've always got to deal with that national voting audience and Colorado Rockies pitching. And so, as much and no one's been a bigger believer in John Gray than me. Look, man, no one's been a bigger believer, and I'd like to believe that he's proven me right more often than not. But I think the betting, the wise bet, though I do see in Gray the wheels turning and the opportunity for him to come out with that great season. Unfortunately, I got to cut that Cy Young chance out of there. I think the national audience, too, has made up their minds a little bit on Gray. I think they see him a little bit as a bust already, which is sad and not true.
It's also challenging, too, when you pitch at Coors Field. If you've got a 3.5 ERA or even a 3 ERA at Coors Field, that's amazing. But that's going to damage your overall ERA, and all it takes is anybody else in their 12 starts to be that much more dominant. And if you have a 1.52 ERA, you go, wait a minute, this guy, John Gray, man, he's the lead, he's the ace of that staff in Colorado with his 2.75 ERA on the season. Yeah, but look at Jacob deGrom. He's got a 2.00. It's part of his legacy. It's going on his Hall of Fame plaque, all of those things. You err on the side of the legend. You go, hey, John Gray, that's great. You're going to get votes. We're going to put you in at second place in Cy Young Award voting, but do it next year, and now you can be in that group. So you're right. I think that's the one that you would have to cut. And for me, I think Trevor Story as the MVP could be the choice to go to. Again, Arenado is that known commodity and is the guy that maybe, not that you overlook, but you go, yeah, of course, he's going to put up these type of numbers, but Trevor Story is going to do it with a little more flash and pizzazz, right? He's got some of the same flash defensively as Arenado, but at the plate, he almost has even more, with the 3 home run game that we saw in 2018, going down to one knee, a smaller guy who also has speed. Arenado himself has said, man, Story's got more raw power than I do. Yes.
That's 100%. Yeah, both of that. He's got better raw power, better raw speed.
And I think, again, those up-the-middle players are key for so many voters in the BBWAA, and I think he can just become that next darling. And all it takes is a similar season, maybe a notch above Nolan Arenado, which is not as any stretch of the imagination, very feasible to happen. I'm going to start Story and bench Arenado as the MVP this year.
I think that's a great call. I could, the irony of it, the idea that Trevor could win an MVP before Nolan after everything that Nolan Arenado has done in the game of baseball. But it would be such a Rockies thing too, to like this guy who's going to maybe go down in the history of the game as the best third baseman to ever play. Well, actually, probably really the actuary tables suggest that's where his career will end, as the best third baseman who ever played the game, and he won't have a single MVP. It's going to be tougher to get one from here on out too, because he's going to be on the other side of 30 after this year as well. But I'm with you. I think voters like the shiny new toy. Voters like that extra statistical column if Trevor Story steals 20. Well, not 20 bases, but you know what I mean, what he would have done if he was on a 20 stolen base pace, if he's, that kind of the equivalent of type of guy. It's going to be crazy, man. I could see him snatching it. The one thing I see Nolan having a monster season. I just see him going out there and doing stupid stuff. I think if you had to take a bet, a DraftKings bet, on 5 guys in Major League Baseball who will do something stupid, like hit over 400 for the year or 20 home runs plus or whatever, position players. Nolan's on that short list. It's Nolan, Trout, Bellinger.
Maybe
Sadly,
Altuve.
Maybe Altuve, maybe even Mookie Betts, as much as I hate to say it. But those
Maybe
are the...
Altuve. All right, so for our next start bench cut, who has higher WAR this year? Ryan McMahon, Daniel Murphy, or Kyle Freeland? Now, I took David Dahl out of there just because we think, okay, hey, he's the all-star. He's done it. We're going to keep him out of that group because he would be the obvious one. So we got Ryan McMahon, Daniel Murphy, and Kyle Freeland start bench cut. Which one most likely to happen? Which one's least likely? And we got one in the middle that we're just going to bench.
This is tough, because I think all three of these guys are going to have good years.
Yeah.
Pitcher WAR is not especially friendly to what Freeland does, and I don't see him having the 2.8 ERA. I see him having the 3.7, 3.8 ERA. And with not very few strikeouts, I think he'll get a little bit more than he had, certainly than last year. But he's never going to be the 9, 10 strikeouts a game guy. Therefore, sadly, I got to cut the idea of Freeland having the best WAR here. I think he's the lowest on the list, though I think a solid 1.5 and up WAR campaign is very much in the books for Freeland, and you'd take that. Murphy, I feel similarly about. Bounce back, yes. Good numbers, yes. He's not going to get anything for his defense. I don't know that he's going to have the kind of power he used to. I think he'll on base and he'll hit better and he'll get some pop, but I don't think he's the home run guy he once was. Ryan McMahon, I think, has a monster season. I think he's fantastic defensively. I think he's fantastic offensively. I think he hits a couple of balls that make people go, holy sh-. So McMahon, I'm going hardest in on Ryan McMahon here.
You're right. Yes, that is the start, Ryan McMahon. And I tell you what, those home runs that he hit, he might even hit a couple of the left center field that make you go. He almost hit on the concourse opposite way. Yeah. We saw that in batting practice throughout summer camp. It's unbelievable. Yeah. He's the start. He'll have the highest WAR. And I actually think Kyle Freeland is the better bet to bench, and I would cut Daniel Murphy because, frankly, Daniel Murphy plays the harder position at first base where guys, if you're not hitting 15 home runs in a 60-game season as a first baseman, well, then you just lost all of your value, right? Yep. We've seen that happen to other guys as good as Justin Morneau, was for a season and a half. You look at his WAR and you go, well, that's good, but it's not like, elite because, again, it's as a first baseman, you can't do what his teammate in Minnesota when Joe Mara moved over to first base. You go, wow, he's a pedestrian first baseman by the first baseman standard of an American League first baseman. Can you say first baseman any more times?
I was going to say, get it in there a few more times in there. No.
First bagger.
What position did you play?
I forget.
All the other
lukewarm corner.
All the other positions have extra fun nicknames.
That's right.
Yeah.
The lukewarm corner.
Yeah.
But Freeland, I think, again, like you said, he's going to bounce back. So I think there's just enough to go around that, even with just a simple 2.8 up to 3.5 WAR could be good enough to be the second highest in that group. But, yeah, Ryan McMahon, he is the guy in 2020.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm all in.
Final start bench cut is, again, we're gonna look at WAR, and we're gonna take Wade Davis and leave it up to you, or leave it up to anyone in the comments section. Who else do you think might be on par with a Wade Davis as far as WAR? Is there anyone that you think is going to be out of the, you get rid of the top two rungs?
I'll go with the other two guys who are the setup guys right now. All three of those guys. I'm putting Oberg out of the conversation. Give me Davis, Estevez, and Diaz. And I'll do this for you. I'm going to start Wade Davis. I think Davis is having a nice season. I think Carlos Estevez is right there after him. Got him on the bench. Love Iro Diaz. Don't think he's going to have a bad year at all. I don't think he's going to need to be in the same kind of role he was. I see these other guys getting on a better run. I think he'll be fine, but I'm putting my stock in these other two guys. Believe it or not, yes, I said it, Wade Davis at the top. There's something there. I don't think he's done. I think he's the most talented of all of them. That's just the truth. Whether he can tap back into that talent at age 34 after such a rough season is the only question. I think he can. I think he does.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. He's definitely would be my start because he's as you said, he's proven it. He's got that track record. He's done it in the playoffs, and last year's is more of an aberration than anything. And then you say, all right, Carlos Estevez, Jairo Diaz, which one of those guys doesn't do it? You're like, you got to cut one of those guys? Come on. They're two of the most young and exciting relievers that they've had since Scott Oberg came up ultimately, and since Adam Ottavino figured it out again in 2018. But I would probably just bench Carlos Estevez because I think he's the real deal, and he's a guy that when he came up in 2016 as a rookie and was the closer, wasn't entirely ready for it yet, but what he did as a rookie is pretty impressive, and you saw what he did last year after coming back for some injuries in 2018 and just look amazing. He's got that heater. He's a big dude, big body, great mental disposition, and he's going to be the closer, I think in 2 years' time, whether he shares the role with Scott Oberg or even if he's just fine as a setup man. You got a setup man, or you got a closer in the 8th inning, hey, that's great. But I'm going to start Wade Davis, and I'll bench Carlos Estevez. And Jairo Diaz, I'm going to try to figure out a way to get him on my roster still.
Yeah, I know, right? Can we pass him through waivers and get him back through some stuff? Yeah, absolutely. That was a tough one. Everybody at home, by the way, is going, hey, what now? Everybody at home saying, I'm starting Estevez, keeping Diaz, and getting rid of Davis. And I understand why they're saying that. Fair enough. All right, cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap this one up for us. If you're watching live, that means we're getting ready to watch the first game of the Colorado Rockies season. If you're listening to this later, we've already given you our thoughts and analysis on that on the podcast, and you are preparing yourself to watch John Gray, the Wolf of Blake Street, take his talents out there on the road to see if he can follow up whatever it is that Marquez has done. One way you can make sure that you're not behind anything that we're doing here at DNVR is, of course, to give us a subscribe. We pumped out, I think, 10 pieces of content in the last 3-4 days. It's been a whole lot of fun running through all these aspects of the team, waxing poetic about baseball, talking about best case scenarios and worst case scenarios, making bold predictions, all of that stuff you can find there. Patrick, it's been...
I've got blisters on my fingers. Like, that's how much work we've been putting in, and I know you don't, because you got those calloused digits, from all your days of tweedling on the guitar.
The guitar gives you those calluses, but man, it's been a hell of an off season in more ways than one. You can interpret that, and we've made it through it all together, man. Nobody else I'd rather have by my side during all of this, and during the days to come in this upcoming crazy season that we're about to witness. So,
are you about to make a proposal here?
That's right. Let's see how
drop
the
to
season
one
goes.
knee. We'll see how it goes. All right.
Let's see how the season goes. Let's see
We're
how
kind of pre-engaged.
Right.
Yeah. And again, if for those of you watching live, we're going to come back after the game to give you a little post-game wrap-up, and expect that pretty much for the entirety of the season and the postseason. Question mark?
That's right. So make sure you're subscribed to everything, the YouTube channel, the DNVR, all the social media stuff. You get yourself some cool merch so you're not showing up to one of our watch parties without cool Rockies merch on, or at least DNVR gear, that you're continuing to remain absolutely awesome out there. We will continue to remain absolutely Patrick Lyons and Drew Creasman in here. And until next time, we will see you at the ballpark.